'tis accustomed with Prospero.
A bird of my tongue is better than a beast of yours.
The evil that men do lives after them.
What fool art thou, Romeo?
What dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil?
Blood hath been shed in love.
If music be the food of love, play on.
Speak low if you speak love.
The course of true love never did run smooth.
Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid painted blind.
Whoever loved that loved not at first sight?
Love is like a child that longs for everything it can come by.
Love is blind, and lovers cannot see the pretty follies they themselves commit.
Love sought is good, but given unsought is better.
Doubt that the stars are fire, doubt that the sun doth move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love.
I will not be sworn, but love may transform me into an oyster.
Men have died from time to time, and worms have eaten them, but not for love.
To be wise and love exceeds man's might.
They are in the very wrath of love, and they will together. Clubs cannot part them.
The sight of lovers feedeth those in love.
I have no ways to mince it in love, but directly to say, I love you. Welcome, everybody. How are you? Happy Valentine's Day. There they are. There's Nora and Andrew are joining us back again today, both of whom were in previous episodes, and we're so glad to have them back and to have this, you know, like we used to watch on our favorite sitcoms when we were kids, a very special episode. John, you should actually put this all in black and white, and it'll feel even that much. I'm kidding. But this is a very special episode. So I hope you're enjoying your Valentine's evening, and you know, maybe a candlelit dinner, probably at home, which is still good. A little. So we're hoping to help you celebrate in a year which is maybe a little bit more difficult to celebrate than it has been in the past. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This is going to be about, obviously, as the quotes that started off the show, Shakespeare and love, right? One of the kind of most famous movies of the last 20 or so years is Shakespeare in Love. So maybe that's, you know, after you finish this, you'll be so inspired that you'll throw that on the, I won't say VCR or DVD player even, but you'll stream it somewhere and watch Shakespeare in Love. But it's so great to have Andrew and Nora with us to explore Shakespeare and Love. And we're going to rehearse his most famous love scene, and then we're going to do it for you. So we're going to try to create it here on Zoom. You know, it's just a lot. First off, guys, how you doing? Nora, how you doing? How you been since last we talked?
Great.
Yeah.
Happy Valentine's
Day. Happy Valentine's Day. And how's the tiny traveling theater? We talked about that last time you were on. How's your mini house?
Great. We're doing good. We're actually parked at a horse farm in Carolina, Rhode Island. I bet you didn't know that place existed.
Yeah.
So yeah, keeping sane in this crazy year. But
Great. Yes, down in Carolina. Those of you who have never been down to Carolina, Rhode Island before, I would say take a ride, especially when there's not that much else to do. It's certainly really. I was down there myself recently. It's very beautiful in the snow. And Andrew, how about you, man? How you been?
Doing all right, you know, trying to stay busy with the small and happy things, and reading a lot, watching a lot, you know, all you can do to stay keeping your life moving forward in this crazy time.
Yeah. And you're, you know, both, let's talk a little bit about what's happening theatrically in our lives. I know, you know, Nora, your hopeful next gig is a Shakespearean one, right? And what's that going to be?
Hopefully on Boston Common, we'll be doing the Tempest, which was supposed to happen last year, but happened virtually. So we did a Zoom reading of the Tempest. And so hopefully we'll be in person on the Boston Common here. And I'll be playing
that.
You're playing whom?
Miranda. Playing Miranda.
Right, and we've a bunch of other episodes. We've seen a lot of your compatriots on the show. Fred Sullivan, who will be in it, playing Stefano. John Douglas Thompson, of course, playing Prospero, playing your dad. Remo Araldi was with us just a couple of weeks ago, and I know he'll be in it too. I think he's playing Antonio. So it's a great group of people. And Andrew, of course, you've worked up at Commonwealth a bunch back in the day, and we do know that you're still. Last we talked, we were able to celebrate your Tony Award nomination, which is still hanging in the balance. So what is it like with the sword of Damocles of the Tony Award there? Do you any news? When are they going to show that? When is it?
Everybody, I always get, when's it going to be? When's the ceremony going to be? And I'll say, when I get the email, I'll forward it to you. Yeah. I know just about as much as anybody else. At the same time, it's such an incredible honor and to be able to celebrate that with my family and teachers and colleagues and friends is, one of the greatest gifts of this sort of nightmare that we've been living through.
Right.
So yeah, just holding on to hope. Yeah.
And so just as a reminder, of course, Andrew was nominated for his performance in The Inheritance by Matthew Lopez as Toby Darling, which, as I think we talked about last time, got to see on the night it closed, actually, the day it closed, both shows on the day it closed, and when Andrew was infected with COVID, actually, and single-handedly responsible. No, I'm kidding. For infecting the entire theater, sold-out theater on Broadway. He was not, and still delivered an amazing performance. So great to have you guys. Speaking of, you were just talking about being able to celebrate with your teachers, of course. The three of us go a certain amount of way back to because we're all public school kids at the University of Rhode Island, where Andrew and I both teach now, and you guys were undergraduates together, right?
That we were in your very Shakespeare class.
And we were talking about, this show today is about Shakespeare and love, of course. And as we were discussing, what we're going to do today, and you had to remind me what it was. But when we were working together in the Shakespeare class back several years back, you guys worked together on a great Shakespeare love scene, not the one we're going to talk about today, not the famous balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet, but what was that scene?
Hotspur and Lady Percy.
Right, from
Henry IV, Part 1.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because we're going to talk about, so like this is, people probably say, what do you mean a great love scene from Henry IV, Part 1? You know what I mean? It sounds like, isn't that a play about war? And it is. But in the middle of it, you could make an argument that the protagonist of that particular part of the play, right, is Hotspur, right? Is not even in a sense, which is he's the for those of you who don't know the play, he's the kind of foil to Hal, the prince who becomes Henry V, and there's basically has 1.5 scenes with his wife in this play, Lady Percy, who Nora played when we did it, and it's an incredible 7-minute scene in Act 2 of this play that I always thought, and maybe we'll talk about it a little later, because if Romeo and Juliet grew up and were able to, and they got married and they were able to have a marriage, you wonder if maybe they would have turned out like Lady Percy and Hotspur, which is a really complex and beautiful adult relationship, and very much an incredible love scene. Shakespeare's written so much about love. Obviously, when we think about it automatically, we think about, I think, the scene that we're going to look at today, which is the Romeo and Juliet's balcony scene. But there's then so much else, as evinced by the beginning here, where we went through those quotes, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg of things that he wrote about love. Right? There's a reason why the movie is called Shakespeare in Love. Right? He's probably our greatest love poet. He, of course, also wrote 154, yes, that's right, 154 sonnets, almost all of whom about some state of being infatuated, obsessed, desiring, desired of, etc., about love, which, and we're going to close the show with, is probably his most famous sonnet about love. So he's, I think he could be considered the greatest poet of love ever, right? At least in the English language, you know,
Sure.
that would be hard to kind of argue with. What beyond Romeo and Juliet, and you guys have had a lot of experience in this. So, do you have any favorite love scenes, pieces of Shakespeare that are about love?
Well, I think it's kind of funny. I was thinking about I've never played Juliet.
Mhm.
I've played Perdita in The Winter's Tale, and I've played Imogen in Cymbeline. And you, Burnap, you've also played sort of Valentine in Two Gentlemen of Verona, and Troilus and Cressida, and all of these incredible love stories. Just the slightly lesser known ones.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, the love scenes in Troilus and Cressida are you know, they would blush at the sort of beauty of the poetry of this scene. It's like, you know, I sometimes have said that much like Coriolanus, listening to Troilus and Cressida is like steel hitting steel. So sometimes it's wildly unquotable, but the love scenes in Troilus and Cressida are actually some of my favorites because Troilus is so out of his depth when talking about love, whereas Romeo is the kind of guy who loves love. Right. And it's such a foreign thing to Troilus that it's almost in a very cute way, just like coming up with these words that, where did you hear this stuff? So that's some of my favorite stuff to work on, because it's so out of the blue for him.
Yeah, and there's so much within his plays. I don't think there's a play that we go through where love isn't a major theme in. Even a play like Coriolanus, certainly familial love and mother-son love is a big part of that, right? My favorite, I was saying this a couple of episodes ago, we had Mariana Basham on, and we were talking mostly about Viola and Twelfth Night. And for me, Twelfth Night, from my opinion, is his greatest play about love, because it really exploring, this is such a focused piece on the title characters, Romeo and Juliet, right? Whereas Twelfth Night is his great ensemble comedy about the kind of myriad ways love can kind of transform, and its pervasiveness in every kind of physical and personal intimate relationship between any two humans possible, right? Yeah. Which is really something else, the way he weaves that together. So there's nobody better. But for some reason, the scene we're about to kind of explore has captured the imagination of the planet for 400 years, right? And this transcends, as we talked about in the last episode with Remo, we were talking a lot about Shakespeare in not in English. Probably beyond, this language, I think one could make the argument that Romeo and Juliet is his most famous play, right? It's probably not a culture on earth that doesn't have some version of this or understand some version of it in their own way. This story, why do you think that is? What is it about Romeo and Juliet that everybody knows it, that it's kind of, even if you don't know who Shakespeare is, you somehow know what Romeo and Juliet is? Nora? Well,
I mean, what's incredible about this scene is how, quickly they fall in love, and how they don't apologize for it. Juliet has this lovely moment where she says, "Farewell compliment." It's like, so much for formality. Like, here we go. You jumping in, I'm jumping in too. Yeah, we started with those quotes, and one of you said from a role that you played at the Gamm, actually, Rosalind in As You Like It. Whoever loved that loved not at first sight, right? I bet if you just ask people where was that from, they would say that's from Romeo and Juliet, right? No, it's not actually, right? But it struck me. I remember working on it and talking about it in rehearsal and thinking, like, isn't that the truest thing ever written, right? Said, like, somehow we often talk about this in acting class too. It's like, how often do you fall in love? Like, all the time, right? I mean, you don't pursue it necessarily to its, destructive ends, because we make choices in our relationships, but the spark of love, right? Like, what happens, what animates inside of us that goes, when we see that in this scene, we'll talk about this in a minute. The scene is full of those moments of revelatory gasp, right? They just kind of fall into each other. Like, whoever loved, and so that when we talk about Romeo and Juliet, we think about love at first sight, right? And most of us, I mean, there are two versions in that credit sequence that John runs here, that wonderful thing at the beginning of our little show. In Shakespeare's Sunglasses, you see Olivia Hussey,
right? In the famous Romeo, the Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet, which was, it's before my time even, but it was a big thing when I was a kid because we would watch that in high school, and that was the standard version that everybody got to see until you guys, who are only a few years younger than I am, would have grown up on a different, but equally famous version of this, which was, of course, which one? What's the Romeo and Juliet from your days?
The Baz Luhrmann, Leo.
Right, Leonardo
Leo and
DiCaprio, Claire Danes, right?
That's right.
And he strikes. I remember in that film how beautiful it is. Talk about a great where Luhrmann is a crazy director, right? And he manages something very beautiful in that film. No matter what you think of how the language is used, and we could talk about that another time. But the cinematic language of love at first sight, right? Those of you who've seen this film, and if you haven't, go back and watch this scene where DiCaprio as Romeo and Claire Danes as Juliet meet at the party, and he's high on some kind of he's tripping on LSD or something, and he's dressed like a knight and she's dressed like an angel, and they see each other through the aquarium, right? And it's all the visual thing, and you get struck. And I remember being in the theater watching it with a bunch of high school age kids. Actually, I felt like an old man at the time. I think I was about 25, and it was so moving to see that, and that capturing that moment, which is the moments that stay with us through our entire lives. Right at the end, I hope what I remember are those moments. Is the kind of shoveling in the dirt. The last thing is, when did I love, right? You never regret those things. Yeah. So this love at first sight has a big thing to do with it. But then, of course, there's the lines, right? Of all of the famous love things we quoted at the beginning, we didn't mention anything from this scene because as we go through this, you're going to hear there's like 100 lines. Only Hamlet can rival this scene for kind of quotable Shakespeare, right? Where this kind of entered our, and so we're going to hear them. Andrew, what about you? What is about this scene do you think that stays with us?
I mean, not only, as you say, sort of the quotes from it that ring out as, universal truths. There's a level that I think a lot of us, certainly as young actors, or myself, I should say, would shy away from, is a level of sincerity in this. There's a level of pure, unadulterated sincerity, which is hard for an actor sometimes to just come to the table with. There's so much that in modern life that we hide behind sarcasm and irony and things of that nature, and these are two characters who are wearing their hearts on their sleeves without any, to borrow your phrase, Nora, unapologetically. So there's something that I think sort of breathes life into a human when they hear another human being just so purely there with them. You know what I mean? There's nothing to hide behind in this scene. Every single thing they're saying, they actually fully mean. Which is just so beautiful. There's no games being played. It's all just pure love, and that has withstood the sands of time, which is pretty cool.
Right, and it shows a need in all of us, right, for an experience without irony, or that doesn't have to be filtered through sarcasm, which means it's completely unprotected, right? And if love is anything, that vulnerability, right, is what it's about. It's like when you open your heart, your chest up to another, right? And of course, the pain and everything that comes with that, yeah? Andrew, can you try something for me for a second? I think that your mic might be a little loud. Can you see if you can bring it down a little bit?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're...
I wonder how I can.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Maybe just the volume on the speaker on your thing. It's echoing a little bit.
Okay, gotcha. Is that any better?
Yeah. Let's try that. Yeah,
right.
We'll see. It's all Zoom. We'll do, and actually it's not. It's a Zoom-like StreamYard. Thank you, StreamYard. I wonder if they kick you out if you advertise for another platform.
Right.
But anyway, all right, let's jump in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of work our way through the beginning of the scene and try to give some little insight into what we might do in a rehearsal, a table read. When we started a rehearsal, we get in a room together, the director and all of the actors, and you plop that text open in front of you and you plow ahead, and you try to examine the language and ask, as we have done in the show, what is it that Shakespeare is trying to tell us? How is he directing us? And what can we learn from his language that will tell us how to act this scene? And then as we do that, we'll try to come up with John's help behind the scenes of maybe some ways in which this platform on the StreamYard we can actually make the scene work a little bit in here. I don't know. We'll see. It's tricky. We don't have a balcony. We don't have a, he jumps over a wall in this scene. To give you a little context, Romeo's just come from the party. Juliet's come. They both come from the party where they met. They actually have already kissed. And they dance together. And then he heads out with his friends. And his friends are making fun of him because he's fallen in love again, which he tends to do. And he abandons his friends and jumps back over the wall into the Capulet compound, which is a very dangerous place for him. And he's listening to his friends make fun of him from a distance as they look for him. Meanwhile, Juliet is in bed. She's getting ready. She's up in her bedroom, and he doesn't know where that is. He has no idea where he is. He's just kind of, looking, maybe hoping, right, to that he might catch another glimpse of her. Yeah. So that's where we begin. And it begins alone with Romeo, and Juliet is going to enter as we come in. So let's, if we can, John, let's just let Andrew have the screen to himself, and we'll start this. Go ahead, Andrew.
He jests at scars that never felt a wound. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady, oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses. I will answer it. I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Her eye in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek.
Ay me.
She speaks. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being o'er my head, as is a winged messenger of heaven unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds that sails upon the bosom of the air.
Oh, Romeo! Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?
'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not Montague. What's Montague? It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself.
I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth I never will be Romeo.
What man art thou, that thus bescreened in night so stumblest on my counsel?
By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word.
My ears have yet not drunk 100 words of thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague?
Neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike.
Should we wait for Tony to come back in?
Yeah.
I was like, Where'd the director go?
Oh, I think you might be muted.
You guys were great. No. I started to talk, and then I you couldn't hear me. John had taken me out, and then I was like, oh, this is so great. Why would I want to talk? It's so beautiful. Let's just we'll talk about it. We'll break it down, and then we'll work our way through and go to the next part. But it's so lovely, guys. Yeah, I mean, there's all of those revelations in the beginning. And Andrew, John, can you bring up the text there a little bit? That first speech, but soft, the first page of text. Is that possible? There's so much happening on the screen right now. So John's like kind of like he's got several levers working and all of that.
Pause.
Yeah, nope, he can't. Look at that. I can't do it. Sorry. It goes to you.
Look it up in your textbooks, please.
Everyone, yes, please open your hymnals to
pencils down.
Yeah, Act 2, Scene 2. I could put this up in the screen and you can see mine, right? I bet you could see that. How do I do this? The mirror is not helping me. Right, but soft, what light through yonder window breaks. Yeah, It is the east. So right off the bat, we have in the scene a series of revelations. Right, we talked about the context, and Romeo is, get away from me, you have Mercutio making fun of him, busting him up. Him and Benvolio. He jumps over, and then he no sooner hops the wall than something happens. Right, a light actually comes on. Right, and then we get this incredible metaphor. About the sun and Juliet. And then both of these characters in this play do an amazing thing, which is they kind of command the elements, right? To do their bidding for them. You say the sun, she's the sun, let her get rid of it. And the moon is out there. The moon is lighting your way. It's a very beautiful moonlit night. But you want the moon to go away to allow this thing to come out. Yeah. The light to come up. And it does. And as you make these wishes, they come true. It's like you've got a genie and he gives you 3 wishes and they all are happening for you, right? And then talk about direction. It's the most simple and clear of direction that you could ever get as an actor, right? For Juliet, you don't have to do anything except for what Shakespeare tells you to do, what Romeo tells you to do, right?
Right.
See how she leans her cheek upon that hand. You know what I mean? Then she speaks, right? We have this word come out of her. And then we see the scaffolding with which Romeo builds his dream, right, into a reality. Yeah. And you did such a wonderful job, especially with all that antithetical construction, which we've talked about, which is balancing. Let's go back to just the top of that.
Yeah.
And Andrew, walk us through the metaphor, establishing the metaphor of Juliet and the sun, if you could. Those first to cast it off until she comes in. Yeah.
Great. But soft. What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady.
Good, right? And then she's right there.
Boom,
you cast it off with this big thing, and it's almost like it comes out of you too big, and you're like, did I speak too loud?
Right, there she is.
She walks out brushing her hair or whatever she's doing to get ready for bed, and so the danger goes up too. We know we're going to find out how dangerous a place this is. That's so lovely. I would say in there, it's interesting because this is so ubiquitous and famous. We often say, and the song, right, Romeo and Juliet.
Right, yeah.
We often say Juliet, and as you did in that line a little bit, but it actually scans a little differently, doesn't it? Right? How does that line, the second line, go if we were to scan it on the iambic pentameter there?
It is the east, and Juliet is the sun.
Yeah, so Juliet, right? And Juliet is the sun, right? So it's like it can't be 3 syllables there, right? It's got to be Juliet is the sun, right? There's not a TTE on the end; it's just the ET.
Right.
And Juliet is the sun.
Yeah.
Arise, and it comes out of that, which is great. And then, of course, she arises and she's there. That's so wonderful. And then she goes up, and you can't believe it. And so this kind of, I love how now kind of having this silent dialogue. She's not giving anything back yet. She doesn't know he's there. He's peeking through the bushes. It's very creepy, kind of stalking scene.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's happy to have him there once he gets there. Yeah. So you fall in love, right? This idea that the poetry she's inspiring in you, right, that she brings with her, you've changed you've changed the natural processes, that you have that last from "Oh Speak Again, Bright Angel," which just seems to have no breath to it at all. It's almost like he's breathless by the end, right? It's like even for Shakespeare, the metaphor goes on too long, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And then, so as an actor, right, what does that tell us? And how many times in life are we trying to explain away this complicated feeling that we feel, and we end up just tying ourselves in an explaining not, right? We just keep going and keep going and keep going until we don't even realize how we got here, but we're
yeah.
So as an actor, I think it's so important to highlight we can make the choice if we are really struggling to make sense of what this means. We sometimes, I feel like there are times where it's appropriate to sacrifice intellectual meaning for the experience that I'm trying to articulate or convey, right?
Yeah.
So there, and there's not even, I mean, we can't even put modern punctuation on this because it's just such a thread that just keeps going and going and going, right? It's like he took one thread, he tossed the sort of what is it called, the spool, and it just keeps going. Boom. How do you say all that?
Right. So you look at those lines, if you can see them on my screen there, right? There's not a piece of punctuation from "as is a winged messenger of heaven" through to "air. Right? Yeah. There's no commas, there's no semicolons, there's nothing to help us, as you say. And it's such a great thing. It's like we talk a lot about as actors, and we've talked about it on these programs before, about how to use a verse line, and how the verse line, we can play to the end of the verse line, we take a beat there, not necessarily a pause, but there's a shift, a micro beat that allows the verse line to stay intact and then gives energy to the next verse line. And that's one of the things that separates verse from prose. And then sometimes we choose as actors to run those verse lines on because we think sense will help us. And here, there's no punctuation to indicate that there's any stoppage. And this might be one of those things that you try in rehearsal and say, what if we just run those all together with no stopping? What would it do to my breath? What would it do to the sense of the line? And to Andrew's great insight that the emotion here absolutely overrides the intellectual sense of what he's saying. Yes. And then that kind of breathlessness leads to the most famous line in Shakespeare, which means the most famous line in the history of literature, right? Comes in. So look, can we try that? Just that last bit from "Oh Speak Again, Bright Angel," the breathlessness of Romeo's, and then go into Romeo, Romeo. And then we'll think about Juliet's equally famous speech a little bit, and we'll talk about that. And I'll stop you here. So John, don't put me on mute, okay? Because I'm a megalomaniac. No, I'm kidding. But you can take me out of the picture for now.
Okay. She speaks. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being o'er my head, as is a winged messenger of heaven unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air.
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name.
Good. I want to stop right here for a second and do that one more time. Upturned is a thing in there. I think you need the extra syllable.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It was so great, though, because it was like, I was like, he's not going to have enough breath to get through that. It was great. And it's absolutely mirrors his thing. And then, so pick up on his energy, almost cut him off, Nora. Yeah. Don't let that O be a silent O. Make the O come in right over, almost over the top of air. He says air and it's still flowing out of his mouth and you say O, and that's why he can take a breath finally. It's almost as if you're saving his life here. If you don't talk, he's going to asphyxiate. Yeah. Totally. So let's see if we can just marry those two together one more time from the same place. I love that so much. Yeah.
Great. She speaks. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being o'er my head as is a winged messenger of heaven unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air.
Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or, if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?
'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague. What's Montague? It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name?
Good. Let's stop there for a second. I love that this text is up on the screen, John. You're a genius. That was so good. So now we've figured that out. That's great. So great, guys. It's wonderful. Nora, coming right in there is great. And you played that. And Andrew, clearly shall we say the private parts joke, which Nora, you played beautifully, like any other part belonging to a man, right? She's having this private monologue. She thinks she's alone. There's a creep in the bushes. And she's talking about him, and she talks about something, very delicate about him. And, like I mean, whenever we've seen this, the audience loves that, right? Because Romeo has two focuses in this scene, Juliet and the audience. So this is there's a few examples of this. I think this is the clearest of a kind of semi-soliloquy, right? Mm-hmm. Where the human focus is not aware that she's being focused on. So you also have the audience to talk to directly, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's constantly checking in with them. And she says, nor any other part belonging to a man. And you just go, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world, right? Yeah. Which is going to pay off later when we have that great line at later in the scene where she says, what satisfaction canst thou have tonight, right? He goes, but are you so unsatisfied, right? Yeah. And the audience, of course, goes crazy for that because it's unadulterated, as you say, not sarcastic, not ironic, need, desire, love, right? So we get, oh, Romeo, Romeo, and we know, so to a modern ear, wherefore, the famous line, oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo, might sound like, where are you, Romeo, as if she's calling to him, because we hear wherefore, but wherefore actually means, Nora?
Why?
Why are you Romeo, right? Why do you have to be Romeo? And then we get to play on the name, right? What's in a name? And we know that. So this is an incredible argument. Another one of the most famous lines, this speech is full of them. What's in a name, a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So she starts to question the way words actually work here, right? So it's a talk about its language about language, yeah. And rose, even like what could a rose could be anything, and we attribute to it. We just call it that, which is so great. And you did that beautifully. And we get this reaction, and then you finally tell him. We get to the end, and I want to pick it up from here, where you make a decision. It's very logical, right? It's great too because teenagers really get when they embrace logic, and they drive their parents crazy, right? Because it's like, why, right? And if I can make 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4, then sorry, I've made my argument. And so I
think it's also very much worth it. I mean, just in talking about a rehearsal process, you could spend an entire day of rehearsal on the line, what's in a name? Yeah. And just on the difference in the stress of that line, whether you stress the word what versus, Orson Welles has that famous quote about stressing the word in, which I won't repeat on this program. But the difference between stressing those two words are kind of infinite. Yeah. One talking about the subject of what the substance of a name and what is actually possessed inside of a name,
Yeah, let's try that, Nora. Let's try what's in a name, and let's try it once to take all myself. Let's try it once with hitting what's, and then we'll try it again, and we'll try in, and see how that affects how you search the rest of the speech.
Sure.
Great.
Starting from
what's in a name.
What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name which is no part of thee, take all myself.
Great, right? And that time you did in.
In, yeah. It does scan as what's in a name.
Right, so it does,
I agree that definitely makes it more, I think we talked about this a little bit where it's, she sort of dives into sort of like a detective of
Language.
Exactly. Yeah. So as to bumping off of sort of her saying name, be some other name. What's in a name?
Right.
That sort of takes you to like the poetry of that which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet.
Yeah.
So, I think both are equally valid. It's fun.
That's great. Let's try the other one. Let's try. I think I love that because it made you as an actor, you hear yourself do in, and then that sets up certain expectations for the rest of the lines, right? And then you start to search Romeo differently. And even the word rose is like, it has a question there. And is that actually what I think it is? And it starts to distrust the whole kind of scaffold upon which we build how we communicate, which is amazing. And then Romeo, and then the repeat of name, and then it's self-evident by the end of that speech with in, right? Try it with what's and see if that changes anything.
Cool.
So what's in a name versus what's in a name, yeah?
Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we would call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. And so Romeo would. Were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Oh, Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all of myself.
That's great. Yeah. I don't know, Andrew. What do you think?
I also don't know. I honestly, that would be something that I would play with for almost every time we do it something different until, and that's the sort of thing that it's the beauty of sort of acting in general, which is, you know what, I don't know why, but in this moment, I feel like I want to stress in, and that night I do in, and then tomorrow night the audience gets what's an entirely different investigation of that speech, which is what makes it, all the more exciting, I think.
Right. And equally valid here. I mean, you might choose, depending on what the rest of the kind of conceptualization or framework of the production is trying to do. One might fit better than the other, and that would be determined by other factors. But I love that first one was really interesting because, as you point out, Orson Welles would horsewhip us for forever doing that with a preposition. But there's something about the searching of it. And then it also connected me. It made, for me in this, Juliet younger. So obviously, almost never does an actor of the appropriate age play Juliet because she's 13, just about to turn 14. And that just belies a technical experience for a young actor to be able to actually do what Shakespeare does. So it usually is an actor in her 20s somewhere, right? And we do the leap or whatever, and we're fine with that. And Nora, you could certainly play this today, and yet, so if I might say, oh, let's go that way because that helps me make the leap to 14. Be overly logical. I'm going to make this happen. And we know, something about, they're both supremely intelligent characters. I think you could argue Juliet's a far more practical, practically and engaged person than Romeo is, right? She doesn't have all the breathless, she's like, this is what we're going to do, right?
Exactly. The Bills are on the 5th. Let's go.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. That's a great insight. And I hope for people watching, if you're watching this and you're thinking about that, it also goes, as Andrew pointed out, to one of the reasons why 400 years later, we still do them all the time and why they mean something. Because you could go see this play, the same production on 2 different nights and have a slightly different way into some of this amazing, kind of time tested and honored language. So let's continue. So let's just take it from Romeo Doff, the instruction, and then he pops in here and you don't know he's there. So we get a big reaction to this, and this could be a murderer in the bushes, right? But it turns out to be the person that you wanted to conjure as well. Yeah? Great. Romeo, doff thy name.
Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself.
I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth, I never will be Romeo.
What man art thou that thus screened in night so stumblest on my counsel?
By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name. Stop there.
Oh, it was so good. Not that you should. No, yes, let's stop because what you did was both of you guys were great. You got out of the screen, you came back in, you were direct. And this is great because she gets so direct from here on in because she's
Right.
there's a guy in the bushes. So now it's like, who the fuck is that? Right. So you, because of what's in a name, we just had that conversation when Andrew, you picked up with, what's that next one is
By a name.
By a name. You picked up on her searching and you were like, yeah, if I do your logic, it doesn't make sense. I don't really have a name, I don't think.
Yeah,
and that uncertainty was so mired in every word you said that it was just incredible. It was like, and it was so clear, And so that's also for, again, inside baseball and rehearsal, we're never doing this alone. Our listening as partners in a scene, sometimes people get into acting and the cast list goes up or they get called in a thing and they think, how many lines do I have? That's how important I am. Right. Mm-hmm. And versus that our listening and our speaking modes as actors are never different. Right. Mm-hmm. And not only because that's just being a generous partner and being alive all the time in the scene, but it's also because we've got to respond to everything coming out of the other actor. And Nora as Juliet makes an offer with what's in a name and searches in a certain way is going to affect how Andrew responds. So if the next night she does what's in a name, that's going to affect how he responds. And that pinch and ouch of the live experience, even with this fixed language, which is 400 years old, makes it's absolutely always present tense. It's always alive to us. I love that. Yeah. So
that I know not how to tell thee who I am is an entirely monosyllabic line.
Yeah.
So contextually, it gives us clues that I'm trying as I speak. It's all, it's so human. And he gives it to us in such a, if you learn how to, I think the most important part about deciphering this and how to articulate it is, how do you take the clues that Shakespeare has provided you and apply them to each and every line? I mean, even if you just put the first two syllables, I know, right? Mm-hmm. Then it's a complete reversal, not how. I know, not how, to tell thee who I am. So it's just this, how many times do you do that in life, right? Where it reminds me to geek out for a minute. James Spader, who's one of the greatest users of the English language ever, I think, when he played the villain in the Avengers movie, he has the line is there are no strings on me, right? And a lesser actor might say there are no strings on me. James Spader knows to go, there are no strings on me. So he establishes the there are, and then there's a complete reversal after that, which is like Shakespeare's the originator of that stuff.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I just geek out when stuff like that.
I did not expect a James Spader reference in this. I'm so excited. I'll tell you, his performance in that Lincoln was my favorite. It's great.
Incredible.
Incredible. So yeah, that's a great, and that's interesting too that's such a simple line, the way you talk about that, right? It's the most naturalistic, right? In terms of the monosyllables, but it's almost as Shakespeare has written a stutter, right?
Yeah.
If he could write a stutter, which he's never really done, sometimes Hotspur actually has a stutter, right? Because it speaks thick. And you did that without stuttering. You just used the language in a way that was searched. You searched each word, and we got that. And this uncertainty, his joy, his vulnerability, all comes out in that line. It's gorgeous. Yeah, really, really great. And I haven't seen that Avengers movie, so oftentimes when you get what's a little different than this abundant language we get from Shakespeare in film and TV scripts, we get very spare language.
Sure.
And so it really does become incumbent upon an actor, and Spader knows what he's doing, to what can I search in this sparsity to make it abundant, right? Which is the job of the film actor, to kind of take really spare language and kind of somehow enliven it, which Shakespeare sometimes it's the other way around.
Sure, totally.
Great. So we're going to definitely run up against time here. And as Andrew pointed out, we could spend 8 hours of a rehearsal day on that one line, right? We could spend, and we would if we were in rehearsal, this scene would be a lot of hours of our work together in order to kind of to find it towards performance. But I'd like to take it from and just give you guys a run and let our audience just hear this magnificent language on Valentine's Day, and we'll take it to the end of the scene. I'll throw in the nurse's lines at the end. So where were we? Let's take it from there again. Doff thy name, and then let's just go and see what gets us to the end. I know we haven't rehearsed this, we haven't sat there and taken all of this apart. We would stop on every line and never get. If we were really rehearsing this, we'd still be on Andrew's second line of the monologue, but we'll spare you the inside baseball and just let you enjoy Shakespeare and his greatest scene on love. Yeah. So, but we won't go all the way back to the top. Let's take it from Doff thy name, your command, and then his revelation in the orchard.
Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself.
I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth, I never will be Romeo.
May not thou, that thus bescreened in night, so stumblest on my counsel?
By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself, because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word.
My ears have yet not drunk 100 words of thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo, and a Montague?
Neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike.
How camest thou hither? Tell me, and wherefore? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art, if any of my kinsmen find thee here.
With love's light wings did I o'erperch these walls. For stony limits cannot hold love out. What love can do, that dares love attempt. Therefore thy kinsmen are no stop for me.
If they do see thee, they will murder thee.
Alack! There lies more peril in thine eye than 20 of their swords. Look thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity.
I would not for the world they saw thee here.
I have night's cloak to hide me from their eyes. And thou but love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death prorogued, wanting of thy love.
By whose direction foundst thou out this place?
By love! That first did prompt me to inquire. He lent me counsel, and I lent him eyes. I am no pilot, yet wert thou as far as that vast shore washed with the farthest sea, I should adventure for such merchandise.
Thou know'st the mask of night is on my face. Else would a maiden blush bepaint my cheek for that which thou hast heard me speak tonight. Fain would I dwell on form, fain deny what I have spoke, but farewell compliment. Dost thou love me? I know thou wilt say aye, and I will take thy word. Yet if thou swearest, thou mayst prove false. At lovers' perjuries, they say Jove laughs. Oh, gentle Romeo, if thou dost love, pronounce it faithfully. Or if thou thinkst I am too quickly won, I'll frown and be perverse and say thee nay. So thou wilt woo, or else not for the world. In truth, fair Montague, I am too fond, and therefore thou mayst think my behavior light. But trust me, gentlemen, I'll prove more true than those that have more cunning to be strange. I should have been more strange, I must confess, but that thou overheardst ere I was ware my true love passion. Therefore, pardon me, and not impute this yielding to light love, which the dark night hath so discovered.
Lady, by yonder blessed moon, I vow that tips with silver all these fruit tree tops.
Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon that monthly changes in her circle orb, lest that thy love prove likewise variable.
What shall I swear by?
Do not swear at all. Or, if thou wilt, swear by thy gracious self, which is the god of my idolatry, and I'll believe thee.
If my heart's dear love...
Well, do not swear. Although I joy in thee, I have no joy of this contract tonight. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, too like the lightning which doth cease to be ere one can say it lightens. Sweet, good night. This bud of love by summer's ripening breath may prove a beauteous flower when next we meet. Good night. Good night. As sweet repose and rest come to thy heart as that within my breast.
Oh, wilt thou leave me so unsatisfied?
What satisfaction canst thou have tonight?
The exchange of thy love's faithful vow for mine.
I gave thee mine before thou didst request it. And yet I were to give again.
Wouldst thou withdraw it? For what purpose, love?
But to be frank, and give it thee again. And yet I wish but for the thing I have. My bounty is as boundless as the sea. My love is deep. The more I give to thee, the more I have, for both are infinite. I hear some noise within. Dear love, adieu. Anon, good nurse. Sweet Montague, be true. Stay but a little, I will come again.
Oh, blessed, blessed night. I am afeard, being in night, all this is but a dream. Too flattering sweet to be substantial.
3 words, dear Romeo, and good night indeed. If thy bent of love be honorable, thy purpose marriage, send me word tomorrow by one that I'll procure to come to thee, where and what time thou wilt perform the rite, and all my fortunes at thy foot I'll lay, and follow thee, my lord, throughout the world.
Madam!
I come anon, but if thou mean'st not well, I do beseech thee.
Madam!
By and by I come, to cease thy strife and leave me to my grief. Tomorrow will I send.
So thrive my soul.
1,000 times good night.
1,000 times the worse to want thy light. Love goes toward love as schoolboys from their books, but love from love toward school with heavy looks.
Psst. Romeo. Psst. Oh, for a falconer's voice to lure this tassel gentle back again. Bondage is hoarse and may not speak aloud, else I would tear the cave where echo lies and make her airy tongue more hoarse than mine with repetition of my Romeo.
It is my soul that calls upon my name. How silver sweet sound lovers' tongues by night, like softest music to attending ears.
Romeo!
Oh, dear,
What o'clock tomorrow shall I send to thee?
by the hour of 9.
I will not fail. 'Tis 20 a year till then. I have forgot why I did call thee back.
Let me stand here till thou remember it.
I shall forget to have thee still stand there, remembering how I love thy company.
And I'll still stay to have thee still forget, forgetting any other home but this.
'Tis almost morning. I would have thee gone, and yet no farther than a wanton's bird that lets it hop a little from his hand like a poor prisoner in his twisted gyves, and with silken thread plucks it back again, so loving jealous of his liberty.
I would I were thy bird.
Oh, sweet, so would I. Yet I should kill thee with much cherishing. Good night. Good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow.
Sleep, dwell upon thine eyes, peace in thy breast. Would I were sleep and peace, so sweet to rest. Hence will I to my ghostly friar's close cell, his help to crave, and my dear hap to tell.
Wonderful, guys. So good. What really, really beautifully done. And you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one watching going, oh, these two should just do this right now. And you both certainly, you know, are still fair enough of age and face to pull it off, most importantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, really beautiful. And I'm sure, and for people watching and hearing that scene, it's a scene that we're kind of really familiar with. And then you start to hear parting is such sweet sorrow, right? I mean, and all of these things that, that we're used to kind of, sewn on our pillows in our, in the den. It's gorgeous. And, it comes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, why, right? And I think, you both of you guys, your insights into their openness, and the tragedy then of this. And you said something when we were discussing this about one of the answers to the question of why Romeo and Juliet, right? Why? And you said, and forgive me if I'm paraphrasing poorly, but that like this scene, as we found, has many endings, right? Right. The scene, she goes out, the nurse calls her, she comes back in, then she forgets why he's come back, and he goes out and he comes back in. Come back, Romeo, right? The scene has about 5 or 6 endings to it. And which is absolutely Shakespeare's intent. It's not that often we edit it because we need to, Shakespeare, he says at the beginning of this, 2 hours traffic of our stage. He's lying. Right. It is not 2 hours traffic. So in order to make it 2 hours traffic, we cut a lot out of it. And sometimes the end of the scene actually gets cut. And we miss something great when we do that of this. Those back and forths that the meaning of all of those endings is that it doesn't end, right? There's a sense of the eternal already in this scene, and the kind of bud of love is what I think you used to say, this bud of love at one point, Juliet, right? That there's something eternal in that, and that it can't stop, it can't, and even in the end, right? And even in the end, that there's something about the ending where they don't ever quite conclude. Right, together, and that there's something that I think makes an argument for why this play continues and doesn't really end with us, totally. Because there's a circular thing that takes us right back to the beginning that says anything mattered, right? Was that the first few days when people get cynical and say, what would happen if it was, did I go out? Am I good?
You're back.
Oh, okay. Great. That the only thing that matters, in the end, really, right? When we're thinking about the end is that beginning, the compromise, the staying with, all of that other stuff that makes a life, that makes a relationship is nothing to the spark of what opened it up, and totally. We hope, if anything, could live eternally, Yeah. It's amazing. You guys are something else. What a privilege and a joy. We are right at time now, so we're going to end here by saying to all of you out there, thank you for joining us on this Valentine's Day. We hope you are, together with somebody you love, and that if you're watching this on Valentine's Day, that this helped you cherish your relationship even more. We need it today more than ever as we're huddled together and waiting out this, as he might call it, pitiless storm. It will end. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Thank you to Navigant Credit Union, as always, for sponsoring us. Thank you to John behind the scenes, who we threw into the deep end of the pool to say, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do the other thing? These platforms are ever evolving, but you did a great job. Thank you. Thank you to you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.